Hello friends, this is part 33 of Angular 14 series, and in this session we will discuss about that metadata driven form using reactive controls. Okay, so what happens basically, sometimes you can also see in your project that small label change or some maybe message change or anything. Okay, so for that every time we need to build the Angular application, need to deploy in production server and staging server. Okay, so I don't want not to be like that. I want the form will be designed such a way so that API side, I mean database side, can control everything, right? From validation message and display control, and how also we can rearrange the control based on that API metadata configuration. So basically, so this session will be lengthy, and also it will be very helpful for you for your next upcoming dynamic form, okay, for the project. And here we basically will discuss in this session the key points here: how to create a reactive form group instance using metadata, okay, and how to detect each control change detection every time. So as this will be fully dynamic, if I change anything, let's say here is that is the example, like address, so country, if I select the country, which control to be affected, like state will be affected, but in UI side there won't be anything like state. So this is also fully automated part based on that metadata. I will show you. And how to handle dependent control reference values. This is I'm talking about, like state list or country list, okay. And how to reuse the HTML using ng template, okay. So here some of the portions I will show you how to reuse using ng template. Otherwise every time to show the messages same copy we need to do for every control. So that how do we avoid those things. And also I will show you finally from API side, that how do we style the form controls using the metadata, okay. So here you can see the given picture. Back one actually the continuous controls, like there is no segregation between names, contacts and address. All controls are normal flowing. But here in the top one, actually it is showing by group by, like others, names, contacts, other address, like that, okay. So how do we achieve that, I will show you. Okay, so let's get into the code. Before now jumping to the code, I will show you what I have written. So this is purely generic part, okay. Maybe it will take some time to understand, but trust me, it will very helpful for you. Okay, so here I have created one class, and earlier we have created the generic message validator, actually, which going to show us the, or generate the message based on that form group instance, okay, what is happening inside that form. This is generic part, so I will not touch in this session. And now I have taken two properties and one method. So these elements is nothing but the group by element, okay. Whatever API sending us that elements array, we are grouping those elements based on their parent, okay. So this is the key where we are grouping. So this group by method actually helping us the group controls group by, okay. So using that reduce array reduce method we are doing. And the next is after grouping, here we are creating the control group. So here is the method where controls are generating based on their group. And next thing is here, after creating the form group, we are actually creating the form instance and assigning to the form property. And after that, this build method actually expecting two things. One is the elements array, which will be sent by the API, and another is the control change function. This is anonymous function we are accepting as a parameter. So this control change function we are assigning to a private function, and this private function basically expecting this from group key, element, value, and the index. Okay, and all the basically optional. And then other thing is yes, while we are creating the control, I mean we are adding the control to the form group. So during that time we are also registering that change detection for the control. So during change detection for the control, we are registering this control change function here, and this control change function actually returning from this build, which means if I change anything on the control, then this function will be automatically triggered. Okay, so then let me show you customer service. And basically this model nothing, no need to change anything. Okay, so this is purely generic. And now here customer service, if you see where is that load customer service load form here. Okay, so customer service basically actually returning the list of elements from the API side. Okay, and then customer form service here. Okay, so I have segregated earlier for my previous sessions. I had created the static values here, I mean static controls, so I kept inside this region basis, and here is the dynamic control part. Okay, so one error message, key value pair error message property, and the form elements. Okay, form elements is nothing but that group by form element. Okay, now here actually we are calling the build method, and this app form we are extending here the form service. So this build method we are passing the elements is nothing but this array, and we are also passing that one arrow function here. Okay, after that I have created here a reactive dynamic control, I mean component. So if I go inside this component here, basically nothing, customer form service injected, and this form instance is having that init dynamic form. We are subscribing that init dynamic form, and here some handle on form submit. We are just consoling the values, and here is the method key descending order. I mean whatever group by elements are coming inside the UI, we are basically we are ordering. Okay, so now here is the HTML part. Let me go through it one by one. So as you already know, this form context will have that form instance, and that instance we are assigning inside the form group, and this is the mat card. Here we are looping through form context dot elements, and each group means, if I talk about this screenshot, that others, contacts, names, address, these are the group key. Okay, and each group will have the multiple controls like first name, last name, middle name, those are the things. And this is basically a header, and here form group name is nothing but the name, address, those are the things. And after that group will have this value is nothing but list of control. Okay, so here the element, so based on that attribute type. Okay, before deep down inside this HTML, let me show you. Here is the form. Okay, so now if I refresh the page, this form actually giving us the list of control, I mean list of attributes, you can say. So if I check one of the attribute is attribute name is the first name. This is basically a control key, and placeholder, what would be the placeholder for the control, and the type, what kind of what type of control actually we need, whether it is text box, whether it is drop down, or whether it is auto suggestion, or maybe other control like radio box, checkbox, whatever you want. And display name basically here, I mean if I put one label use with placeholder, then I can use this display name. And parent is nothing but actually it is telling to control that this control will be under the names. Here we are grouping, right? So how many controls will be under the name group? So here actually it is mentioning like middle name also parent is names, last name also parent is the names. So which means these three control will be under names group. And each control the validation object also is there. We can control the validation for each control here. Hints, if I touch something here, one info icon will place, where if I mouse over on that info icon, that hints will be appear in the screen. Okay, and the maximum length, minimum length, so everything. And now I guess you got the point here. Now let me go inside this. Sorry, yes. So if the attribute type is number, then we are putting the control is the type is number. So if I see here attribute type, where is that? Okay, yes, this is the attribute type. And here form control name, as we are using the reactive form control name, attribute name, so this attribute name will be the control key. And the placeholder, we are also placing the attribute placeholder from this object. Okay, now similarly we have written for radio group. Similarly for we have written if it is auto suggestion, then that auto complete control will be appear. And the select means single selection, drop down, mat select. And if any of type not matched, then maybe by default all control to be text box. Okay, so this way actually I have designed the form. Now let me show you how to place the what is called info icon, and will show the error message. Okay, to place the error message, I have already written one code here from previous. I can copy. So here I have placed that mat icon from my previous session component. And here if you see that one validate method I have written when this info icon will be appear, when that tick symbol will appear. So if I type something, that tick symbol is coming. If I remove, then that info icon to control that icon, I have written this validate method inside this component, and we are passing the group key and the attribute name for the control. So here we are checking whether it is dirty and valid or not. Okay, and then mat tooltip, we are as we have as I have showed you here is the hints. Each control actually is having one property that is called hints. Under this validation object, this hints, so that one actually I'm considering here info icon, and that other thing for success and the info. Okay, now same thing, if I see the same thing, I need to do copy and paste for every mat form field, right? So if I already did that copy paste. Now if I see the same thing I have done for here and here and here as well. Okay, now let's save this change. Now see, each control now having that info icon. Okay, what to do for this control? Now question is, every time, so see, this is the common part, right? This is the common part for every control. But now question is, do I need to do, or you can say, do I need to repeat the same thing here? Is there any solution for that? uh, yes, for that there is a solution, or also one solution we can already know. We can create one component for this, for info messages component, and we can place here and we can pass the parameters, right? But I don't want for that another component to be created here. Okay, so what to do for that? I will use ng template here, somewhere, maybe after this ng template, and I will place inside this ng template. And how do we pass from parent to inside this child? Okay, because this template I'm going to use inside this parent. Maybe I will put the reference like info template reference, and I will use this part here, ng template, and here ng, there is one attribute from the material that is called ng template outlet. I can pass this, what is called, yes, I can put this star. Okay, so which means it will take the reference from here, and it will what is called, yes, it will copy all this section inside this area. Okay, so this is the beauty of this ng template. Okay, now how to pass this element? Because this element, if I check, the element scope is up to this, right? So that is why, and this element actually looping through, I cannot place this part inside in this ng container, because each time it will iterate, so duplicate one will appear. Okay, for that, how to pass? See, there is the context. I can pass this context, and then I can use the object. Okay, maybe the object key will be element and value will be that element. You can place any key whatever you want. Okay, and now I can use here let, then the key name from that object and the value. Okay, so this is basically a alias name. Okay, now let me copy paste for other control as well. Yes, now I have done. Okay, so now I can, that repetition actually got removed. Now let's save this change, open the browser here. Yes, that is done, right? So every middle name, the first name, the last name, yes, for every control it is coming. But here small problem actually, the cosmetic part. Okay, so moment you do that using that ng template, actually Angular lost that styling. Okay, so for that, what I need to do here, for this mat icon, I will write one small styling. And now let's save this change. Okay, cool. So now these icon are in the right place. Now next thing is, so this way actually we can reuse the section, you can say. Now the second is third one is how to handle dependent control reference values. Now if I see here, if I click the country, that country list to be visible here, and if I check if I select any of the country, the automatically state list will be appear. Okay, so how to achieve that? So if I observe this JSON, see, for, let's say, each control actually is having that options, and maybe here is that d element, and other types should be some of the data reference. Yes, so these three things actually will be key point for this reference values. Okay, so d element means dependent elements. Suppose let's say first name, any other control which is depending on the first name. Okay, so for that reason, so this is the attribute, and the data reference, which means the path, you can say the relative path of the data, now where from where to fetch the data. Okay, so for that reason, here if you see the select part, the data reference is the API path. Okay, and the attribute type is the select, and the here d element is blank, nothing is there, and options is also not there. That means if I reload, during the page reload, I want the country list to be fetched. Okay, and if I check the auto suggestion part, auto suggestion means that state list. Okay, so here you can see that secure utility references states, then the row id. So here row id is nothing but that country row id. Okay, and here if you see that d element, you can see the country, that means which means state control is depends, reference values depends on the country. Okay, so how do we write the code so that it will handle, code will be handled automatically. Okay, so for that, what I need to do here, let me go to the form service first. Let me close all the file. Okay, so this is basically an idea. Okay, based on your project requirement, your API architecture also, they can change that their way. Okay, what we need to do as a UI developer, based on that schema JSON, this is kind of schema JSON, or you can say metadata. So based on that, we need to observe how do we control, how do we write the code. Okay, so that it will automatically handle. Okay, so here I have written one piece of code. For time being, I am copying and paste here. Okay, so here I have written actually basically two method. One is the public, another you can say private one, and here this part actually we'll talk about some bit later. But here as we had passed arrow function, but instead of that arrow function, I will pass this control change function, and this control change function actually returning from this build method, like group key, element, value, and index. Okay, those params we are capturing inside this. And basically this is kind of JavaScript, how do we pass the anonymous function as a callback function using JavaScript. That concept actually I have written here. And here if the value is there, okay, if I change, suppose let's say country, then that value must be there, right? So that change value, that value, if the value is there, then I am finding out from form elements, like is there any control which is depending dependent control. So that is why I'm from this array I'm trying to finding out that dependent element, if it is this current change attribute name, let's say consider the country. If I change the country, then the element will be country component, country control, and their attribute name will be the country. And inside this array I'm trying to finding out any control with the dependent element with country is there or not. Basically it will find like one control that is called state, and if the dependent element is found, then how the state control or dependent control value will fetch. For that reason I have already I showed you that structure here, if I check the select, here is the path, and if I check that state auto suggestion one, see secure utility reference and states, then only this standardization will be will be there from API side. If, and that is this is obviously get call, and I will replace this expression with the real ID. Okay, and for that reason here I have written, if the param, I mean this is the param, and the data reference, if it is includes this one, then it will be replaced with the selected control value row ID. Okay, and after that from customer context, so that load reference options, actually I have written one HTTP get call here, and basically it will calling to the API and fetching that option list. Okay, and after getting that options, we are assigning which dependent control will fill the options. So here we are filling. Okay, now so this basically two control will help us to fetch the reference values. Okay, now if I cut this code, not required. Now first time if I reload, see there is no other call happens here. Now if I put the mouse and put a debugger here, let's see the value is coming nothing, because first time form is building, I mean instance is creating by that time this on control change actually also is firing. But if I mouse over any of the key, these are the undefined, but first key actually is containing one anonymous or arrow function. Okay, on control change, that is actually returning from that app model here, form model. So that is how on I want during page load this country list to be fetched. Okay, so that is the reason actually I have written this code. You not only country, if any other drop down control will be there inside this form, and if we want that values or reference list to be fetched during the page load, for that control also it will fetch, because we are looping through each control. And here I am checking if the data reference path is there, I mean API path is there, and if there is no dependent element, I mean that is a self control. Okay, let's say country, so there is no dependent, right? So that is control, that control itself a self control. So for those control fetch assign control options. Okay, so it will check that row ID and the other algorithm will flow. Now if I do the save, and here let's refresh the page. Now go to the network. Here you can see that this country list, countries actually lists are coming. Okay, now here if I check, here is the list India and United States. As of now I can change the, I can add more values inside the DB. Okay, now let me put a debugger here on control change. Now if I change the control, see immediately that on control change method fires. And here if I check group key, okay, group key is the address, so this control actually under this group address, and the element is country. You can see that object country, and value I have selected, yes, one object coming, that row ID and title, and the index is basically as this, there is no any other array, so only the 0 index is coming. Okay, now debug this, then I can see here the dependent element it is found as this state. Okay, state 1. Now this option actually now it is blank. Now if I put, let's say here, okay, put debugger here, and let's say let me check the data path. Yes, the data path also is building correctly. And now let's wait. Yes, the 12 state list came here, and this element if I check, yes, the state, the options will fill inside this state. Okay, now just remove all the debugger here. Now I can see, yes, the list is coming. So if any other control which is dependent on parent control, this way we can fetch the reference values without changing anything on inside the UI. Okay, but maybe based on your requirement or based on your API design, so maybe something we need to customize here. But once you customize all the things, then I can use this form anywhere in my project. Okay, just need to prepare the API JSON. Now next thing is here how to reuse HTML using ng templates, that is done, and how to detect each control change detection, that is also done. Now if I put debugger here, if I change anything, let's say here, see the value is coming this, and group key is coming contacts, and the element is coming mobile number. So you have everything inside this method, so I can customize anything here. Okay, now next is show different style form controls using metadata. Okay, before that what I need to do here, that validation message I need to show also, right? So for that I have already written the code. Let me place that. Yes, I have pasted that in a piece of code, that mat error, this one. Now also if I go to the browser here, let me remove the debugger. Now if I change something, yes, that message is coming, see, right? Now that everything is working as expected. Now if I don't do anything, if I change, yes, this one is coming, yes, that object. Okay, so this actually already we know how to display, and I have already assigned the value as object there. That is why this is that object is showing over here. But let me change it quickly for auto suggestion, right? Yes, this mat autocomplete is having one attribute that is called display with, and let's say display option name, sorry, okay, and put this inside the decorator, and let me go to the reactive component here, and basically option, and the option should have title. Okay, because as per the API standard, every drop down option will have title and row ID, those two attribute. Okay, now here you can see the value I have added the option object. Okay, now let's save this change and see once. Select and select, yes, it is coming perfectly. Okay, so now cool. Now let me show you how if I click the save button, how the request object will be. Okay, let me add quickly here. Yes, now go to the console here. If I click, see the object printed like as we have grouped the controls, similar way it will give you that object. Address will have city, state, and country will have this row ID, and state this one. And if I check others as well, citizenship, yes, if I put click the no, if I again click save, you can see the changed value also printing here. Okay, now next thing is to save this customer, what you need to do, you need to just send this object to API, then API will take care to extract. How they will extract, they will know. Okay, so cool. So this way, now I will show you the interesting thing is, now I some of the customer actually want, okay, I don't want the group by, okay, I want continuous flow. Maybe others part will be group by, but other thing names, contacts, and address will be group by. Okay, so how to achieve that? Now let's see. I'm just I will not change anything on UI side, I will change in the API side. Okay, so let me change something here. Let's say the group name will be customer details. Okay, now I have changed. Let me deploy it in production. Okay, I have transferred the file. Now let me quickly refresh the page. Yes, that is there. Okay, this is the customer details. I have added 3 group instead of 4. I have added 3 group. First name, middle name, last name, contacts details all are under this group, and others also, and address I have separated out. And if you want, all will be inside one group. That is also possible. Just we need to change from API side what the parent one. I mean parent. Okay. So this way I can control the regex part. Based on that, UI will validate. I can change the minimum length, maximum length wherever I want, and whatever I want. Okay, so this is called a metadata driven form control. Okay, so now you can for small project you can use this, otherwise you can use the static form as well. That is up to you, and based on your project requirement, how the client want. Okay, so basically for my project, so these are all the controls are metadata driven. So this way we design. Okay, so I guess this is enough for the day, and maybe I believe it will take some time to understand for you, and but believe me, if you understand the flow, it will save a lot of time. So I guess this is the enough for the day, and thank you for listening. Have a great day.